Hey, guys. Hey, church leaders. My name is Mark, and this is our monthly webinar. And this month we're talking about how to choose clips and shorts out of your sermon media. Okay, so first off, if you have sermon media, congratulations. That is step one. It's hard to do this when you don't have a base level, a video of the sermon from Sunday. And let me just reiterate before we get into this. Most of this today is going to be talking about how to choose your sermon clips. That does not have to be the only thing that you pull from a Sunday service to reuse throughout the week. If there is a big emotional moment, if there's a big giant musical push. We had a service not too long ago where we just, for some whatever bad scheduling reason, forgot to tell the congregation to stand during the closing song, and it got to the chorus of the song. It was Gratitude by Brandon Lake. It got to the chorus, and the room couldn't handle it, and the room had to stand up. So it was this giant wave of people. I absolutely cut that out and used it as a reel, just that one segment. Also, if you've got an emotional baptism, an emotional prayer moment. At one point, I had video of a baptism happening over here. Over here, I had people praying by the altar on our steps by the altar, and then I had the worship band playing. So all those things were happening at once. One shot. I was like, well, cutting this out. Definitely going to use that for some sort of something. Also, before I go any further, I can get comments from you if you're watching this over on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook group. Absolutely, I can get those comments, and leave those in the comments. I can see them right over here. So if you're out there and you're watching, there you go. Now back to the actual instruction here. So my point being that you don't have to pull just sermon media. It can be any other impactful moment from your Sunday service. You've got video of all of it. Use it. Reuse it. Recycle that stuff because you have an hour of content every week. It's made fresh every week. Don't let it just sit there on your website in an archive just to kind of rot. And just because it's a couple of weeks old also doesn't mean you can't use it down the road. So don't think about that. Now, another thing I have to warn about is the tendency of people that they want to actually stop and cut out something that's going to be that's going to signify the overall umbrella of the sermon. If you're doing a sermon on generosity, there's a tendency to want to actually pull something that mentions generosity. And if you can do that, that's great. But don't wear yourself out trying to make something work and take a weaker piece of video just because the one that's better doesn't actually tie into generosity in that one, 30-second to 1 minute block there. I had a former pastor who it was tough to pull clips from him because so many of his points were wrapped up in these long stories. And so, you can't take a 5-minute story and get it there so that, it fits into 1 minute and it still all apply. It was full of edits. It was full of all kinds of issues. And so we ended up, I kind of had to work with them a little bit. Give me sound bites. Give me things that I can take. They're going to spur someone to want to go deeper. And that's when it comes down to it. When you're using Reels on Instagram, on Facebook, if you're using a short on YouTube, what you're wanting to do is kind of lay a breadcrumb there for someone to have their interest ignited and then go find the full sermon. Maybe go find a little more about your church. Maybe go find a little more about the sermon series that you're in the middle of. You want to kind of just pique that curiosity a little bit. So just because your clip doesn't mention the title of the sermon or even has anything to do as much on its own with the rest of the sermon series, that's not a reason to not use it. So let me go over here. Let me pull you guys into a Final Cut here. Now, I use Final Cut. We mentioned this in a past webinar. I use Final Cut. I know Premiere has some fantastic tools for doing this exact same thing that I'm doing, but I really want to just allow you to see it in the simplest way possible. So I've got the full sermon pulled in here, and you see here. Now, hey, who's that handsome guy? No, I got to preach on Palm Sunday, and so this is my sermon. So, if the whole focus of the series was the spiritual disciplines. We did a spiritual discipline sermon series during Lent. So we get to Palm Sunday, and on the schedule for the sermon series was generosity. So I had to figure out a way to make the spiritual discipline of generosity match up with the events of Palm Sunday. And it all came together. You know, God showed up, and there are so many things in this sermon that I am not smart enough to have come up with on my own. So, yeah, let me just put that out there. This is God working through me. This is not Mark doing anything on his own. But if you skip on into a little bit, you know, there's that little bit of setting the table you have to do at the beginning of a sermon. So we get about 9 minutes in to this sermon, and I start a little story here. Currency as well. 9:4. We'll say 9:30. At this thing, it was a negative environment, and folks didn't treat each other very well. And I mean, I was always tired. So I'm in the middle of this story, and it's a kind of a long one, and it's all getting to a point that I'm actually going to use as a clip. But when you're doing the clip, you don't really have to have all that much setup, because once again, we're dealing in small bites. We're not dealing in a giant meal of words here. And it got to the point, it got in my brain so much that people around me could tell on Sunday when I remembered I had to go to that job for. Let me skip on into this. Granted, you should be fortunate you have a job. Be thankful for that. But if you're living with that dread of going in, it takes some of the joy out of the days before, because you know that the bad thing is coming. So take that feeling and imagine you're in the middle of a crowd in the city, and they're proclaiming Hosanna. They're really excited that you're there. Okay, so I've gotten this whole thing where I've brought the message into the contemporary setting. Now I'm bringing it back to Jesus coming into the city. And here's where we're going to start our clip here. But you know what's coming. Because in this moment, Jesus knew what was coming. Because in this moment, Jesus knew what was coming. And that is at 11:03. So I was able to cut out all of that. So let me just go ahead and start constructing a reel right here real quick. Duplicate project as, and we'll say sermon reel, vertical, off we go. So now it's set as that. So let me go to 11:02, which is where we had that little exchange earlier. Really excited that you're there, but you know what's coming. Because at this moment, Jesus knew what was coming. So we'll stop that, and we'll see how far we need to get to complete this thought. Because at this moment, Jesus knew what was coming. And when I try to think about myself in that aspect, when I try to think about what I would be feeling in that moment, the word I come from is isolation. Have you ever been in a room where everyone around you seems happy, but you're down? It's lonely, right? So Jesus is in the middle of almost 3 million people. And I can't imagine the solitude that he feels. All right. That's a good little clip there. It's 34 seconds long, but I've got some blank space here, and we're going to go ahead and just do a quick cut there, bring that down, and we'll do a quick cut here and bring that down a little bit. And we'll do a quick cut here and also bring that down a little bit. So now we're at 31, and we can continue working on this as we feel, as we need, as we, as we see fit. I can bring that down, that down. We can take some cuts there. And what I'm doing is I'm not worried about the footage jumping so much, because what I'm going to do in a second, and now we're at 29:12, under 30 seconds. That's yay. Okay, so we're going to resituate this video a little bit. Bring me up. Ugh. Mark needs a trainer.
Because at this moment, Jesus knew what was coming. And when I...
So I just changed the shot a little bit. And I found it's okay to have these little things there. Sometimes you can put a background, but you don't have to actually fill the screen.
And when I try to think about myself in that aspect, when I try to think about what I would be feeling in that moment.
Let's bring that in just a little extra.
Because at this moment, Jesus knew what was coming. And when I try to think about myself in that aspect, when I try to think about what I would be feeling in that moment, the word I come from is isolation. Have you ever been in a room where...
So bring that back to the regular size.
Have you ever been in a room where everyone around you seems happy, but you're down? It's lonely, right? So Jesus is in the middle of almost 3 million people. And I can't imagine the solitude that he feels.
Okay. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this back up a little bit more just to give us a little bit more.
And I can't imagine the solitude that he feels.
Now, if you're working in if you're working in Premiere, you can also go ahead right at this point and pull in your captions. If you're using the captions program, you can go ahead and put your captions on it that way. But yeah, see what I did there? That actually had something to do with the content of Palm Sunday. It was kind of a throwback to the Palm Sunday story, a little extra wrinkle. It brought it into the personal arena. But that was a quick and easy way for me to pull in a thing. I'll export this as a 4K file, upload it to TikTok, to Instagram Reels, to Facebook Reels, and we'll let that go out into the world. So that's easy peasy there. Let me, the biggest thing I have to tell you is always watch the feeling that it gives you when it's done. Are you wanting more? Did that little bit of the story make you want the rest of the story? Did that little bit of the of what was being done, did that make you want to interact a little more, learn more about this church, about this message? Did that make you want to see the entire message so you could see what was going on around that? Well, that's what you need to take into account when you're actually looking for reels, for shorts and clips for those devices, for those platforms. That's what you really should be looking for. Let's do one more real quick. I'll come back over to Final Cut here, and we'll do duplicate project as Reel 2. Now, let me just go ahead and get all this out so we can go back to the original clip there. And if we look around maybe 16, hang on, let me pull this back in. Because I did my timing on this time thing. All right, so we go back to 1653, I think is where I marked it. I swear, this guy, he jumps around so much.
Traditionally, this word means all that exists or all that was created in the original. You see, in this moment, it felt like a victory lap for those people that had gathered. This was it. Messiah's here. But things are not always what they seem. This was going to be a brutal, brutal week. And Jesus went along on a donkey, through the gates, down the streets, knowing what he was going into.
Okay, so obviously we're coming out of a section where we're talking about Jesus arriving on Palm Sunday, knowing what was coming, and being surrounded by people that were praising him as the Messiah, and knowing what was about to happen, but yet he rode on. So let's keep going.
You ever known someone that put on a brave face in spite of what was happening to him? People in that crowd had no idea what Jesus was dealing with. And they didn't know what was to come. And I think about this, and I try to think about that isolation that Jesus felt. Now, hear me, I'm not saying this was unneeded or this was senseless, because we know that it had to happen, right? Jesus was on his way through this joyful crowd as a major sign of God's generosity toward us. The sacrificial nature of it is immeasurable, and in the nature of sacrifice, it hurts.
Okay, that sounds like an ending point. Let's go back to, was it 1736? No, actually, let's start with that. No. Hang on. 1653.
You ever known someone that put on a brave?
Yeah, that is a good blip there. So we'll...
You ever known someone that...
All right, that's 43 seconds long, and we can trim this up a good bit. But yeah, I'm just basically just proving the point here that you don't always have to, give away the farm when it comes to these clips. You can go on with maybe finding something that just piques that interest, that makes someone want to learn more, because you never know when God's going to put a clip in front of somebody. If someone's going to be scrolling through TikTok, someone's going to be scrolling through their YouTube shorts. You never know when they're going to be doing that and when they're going to end up wanting to learn more. You're going to catch them in that right mode where they go searching. That's happened to me, actually. There are pastors that I've scrolled past that I'm like, I'll catch them in the middle of an illustration, or I'll catch them at the end of a point, and I'll be like, well, how'd you get there? And I'll go find the sermon. A lot of times people will put links to previous sermons in their bio, the whole link in bio thing that people use Linktree for and all that. So there you go. That's some things to take into account for when you're looking for clips and reels and shorts within your pre-recorded sermons. So if you have any questions, you can email me, mark@churchvisuals.com. That's mark@churchvisuals.com, or leave comments here in the comment section of the YouTube. I'm sorry, of the Facebook post. So there you go. Hope you have a fantastic day and a fantastic weekend, and we will see you next time here with Church Visuals.